Hey friend, thanks for joining me today. In today's video, I'm going to be walking through a song that I've been working on. It's a forthcoming release in October, and it features vocals from an artist named LeMay. She approached me a little while ago with her sample pack and asked me if I was interested in featuring it in a video that turned out to be a song that I'm going to be releasing. Her name is LeMay, and she's got a great sample pack that's now available. You can purchase the whole thing, or you can purchase individual samples, and it's ready to go vocals that you can fit into any production that you're working on. So check out LeMay. She's also got a great YouTube video channel where she does reaction videos that's gaining a lot of attention, and she's got some really interesting takes on performances, and coming from a seasoned veteran vocalist like herself, there's lots of great information there. Be sure to check out her sample pack, and also please don't forget to check out my website, electronicmusictips.com, where you can pick up my free 6-step guide on how I produce a song from start to finish. It's free, and it's full of great tips and techniques on how I complete a song from start to finish. And the link will be in the description below. Once again, please hit like and subscribe. Helps the channel out, and it only takes a second, and I'll love you for it. So let's get into the production. The vocal that I used from her pack, with a bit of space reverb, and what else do I have here? I've got a long tail space reverb. If you know the black hole reverb, it's the pedal version of that, as well as I've got a short plate reverb on her vocal, just to put it in the same room as some of the other tracks. So in the breakdown, I've got a vocal edit that repeats, and that's kind of the tagline during the drop as well. And I also took that get down and made a sample chopping vocal edit, so that when it's in the track, a little percussive vocal sample to add to the groove. So how I started this track is I actually found a track that I wanted to use for a reference. It's Touch the Sky, Angelo Ferrari remix. It's a great track. I'll only play a couple seconds of it here so I don't get demonetized or any copyright infringement on it. So I started the track by grabbing the drums on the outro. I really like the beat. It's got this disco kind of beat, kind of disco tech housey, right? And what I did was I used Ableton's Convert Drums to New MIDI track. It's going to take a second to create the drum track. So I'm sure if you've experimented with this before, you'll see that gives the rhythm, you know, it's not a bad hand-drawn facsimile of the drums, but it only gives 3 voices when it breaks down the drums to MIDI. So what I've done is I broke that out into I dragged this down into a drum VST called BFD drums. And if you're familiar with BFD drums or haven't heard of it, it's a drum sample editor and programmer by FXpansion. Weird name, but they created this drum editor. It's similar to Addictive Drums. I really like this. I've been a user of BFD since like the first version. So I'm just going to drag this over here. I broke out the drums from the drum to MIDI converter into this drum sample. And the reason why I used this is it's samples of a real kit in a really high-end drum recording studio. And this drum kit was actually recorded, and the sample pack was produced by Joe Barresi. He's the producer for Queens of the Stone Age and the Melvins and Weezer and tons of rock albums. But I wanted to use this because it's kind of a disco track, and I wanted it to have a live kit just to kind of bring out the feel of the disco era with the with the feel of the real kit. So I distributed the drum MIDI hits so that it is a better reproduction of the original sample from my reference track. And you can do this with anything. I've got this BFD MIDI rack that I custom made that's got it all routed so that I can in Ableton program all of these hits. And if you want, you can download this as a rack off of my website for a small fee. It took a couple of hours for me to create this, and if you have BFD, I highly suggest this rack. It was well worth the effort, and I've taken the time to do it, and want to share it with you if you've got BFD. So, anyways, after making this drum rack, I recorded the individual tracks into Ableton so that I can then get rid of just the MIDI tracks and move on with audio. And that's what you see here. I've got the kick and the snare, hi-hat, and most importantly, this ambient mic mix of the room. I've got it down really low, but you can hear how it brings the ambience of the room in from the recording, and really lends itself to kind of the live disco drum feel that I was going for. So that's how I started this track. I normally don't start with the drums, but I wanted them to be a really important focus on this track, and so I decided to start there. I also added a kick, and this is a sample kick that I've picked up from one of my sample packs, and I've shortened it so that it doesn't have the entire body and bass and boom of the full weight of the drum kick. The reason why I do that, as you may have seen on many other videos, infamously deadmau5 and Steve Duda had a conversation online and released a video about the importance of having shorter tails on your kick, so that you're creating space for everything else to kind of breathe and fill in that gap. If you leave your kicks really long, it's going to just fill up your entire track, and then the last part of the kick is where all the boom is that you may not want in your track, unless you're making a really minimal kind of 808 trap style beat. It's not gonna do a house track or other forms of electronic music any justice by having too big of a kick. So then for this kick, I just rolled off a little bit of sub bass and left the EQ the way it is. I liked the high end on this kick. It doesn't interfere much with the rest of the track, so I left it as is. And you can hear with the other kick, I'll isolate it. So the other kick from the BFD live kit is really just adding a bit more top end. And together they're make a pretty funky, tight kick. So on the kick bus, I added a little bit of EQ. I've taken off just a little bit of the high end here, and boosted a little bit of the upper mid EQ. I'm boosting a little bit at 1.5, and I'm also boosting a little bit on the low end. Then I've got a transient designer. I always use a transient designer for every kick sample, for every kick. Use a transient designer for every kick. You're able to manipulate the kick, and it can become so much more punchy by adding a little bit of attack on the front end of the kick, and then you can adjust the body of the kick to taste. That's that. And then lastly, an API 2500 bus compressor on the kick. This is just to bring it up a little bit and tame the transients that I added with the transient designer. So you've heard me mention this before. I like to minimally use the compressor so that it's just kissing the transient. Over compression leads to all sorts of flat audio with tons of artifacts, and I find this way, with a minimal amount of compression, it adds up over the long run to fit nicely, rather than over compressing everything and it just ending up being flat. So here I've got the threshold almost all the way down. You can see the needle's barely moving. I've got the attack backed off, and that's to 3 milliseconds. I almost always use a ratio of 4:1, unless I'm going for a really extreme setting or an effect. Like if I've got a really dirty bass or drum kit that I'm really trying to squeeze a lot of distortion out of, I'll put the ratio up higher than 4:1, but I almost always leave it there. And then I've got a manual release time set at it's roughly 50 milliseconds, maybe 30 milliseconds. And a little bit of gain on the output just to compensate for the level reduction here. So it's just up at maybe 1 or 1.5 decibels of gain. All right, so we've got that. Next, I started working on a previous version of this track where I'll show you the end result, and then I'll show you how I got this. So, because it's a house track and, you know, I wanted kind of a disco feel to it, I wanted some strings and I wanted some kind of swishing and swirly kind of phasey effects, but I didn't want to have the actual strings in there. A lot of my other tracks have a softer sound, which have strings, and they're very orchestral, and they're a bit softer and mellower. I wanted this to be a dance track. So what I did was I took the strings and the previous version and resampled it. So it's got this kind of funky, swirly, phasey effect, where it's got, you know, it's got hints of my previous versions of the song resampled into this track, and I'll show you how to do that and break that down now. So here's the first version of the song. I really liked this organ sample. This comes from a Defected Records sample pack. I really liked the kind of percussive organ sound. And so what I did was I chopped that up and resampled it. And I also added a sub bass from the Moog Sub 37. And what else did I do here? I added this string sound, put some sidechain compression on it. I always sidechain to ghost click. It's just a little click on a separate channel, and then I sidechain to it so that it's always a really tight sidechain. Instead of sidechaining to your kick drum, which is normally a lot bigger, and it doesn't, I find it doesn't make a tight sidechain using the kick. And then that way, if you've got a dedicated sidechain track, you can always have a really tight sidechain sound. So after the adding the strings, what else did I do? Oh, I really wanted to bring out the strings a little more, and added Spitfire strings. This is strings from Spitfire's Abbey Road 2. It's a quartet. Again with sidechain compression. So I think that's it. I took these strings and the organ, and I resampled it. And I'll go back to the main track now to show you how I resampled it. So we're back with the magic of home recording. I resampled what you just heard, and I added a bunch of effects to make it kind of like swirl and whatnot. You can hear the organ in there, and the strings. And so what I did was rolled off the low end, and I added shaper box. So that it adds an automated filter. I also added a little bit of drive so that there's some saturation on it. And I added just a little bit of bit crushing on the top end from about 2750 hertz and up, the filter, and a little bit of compression. So that gave me this kind of filtered sound. I also added just a little bit of Ableton's tops off and crunch, especially for the intro. It gives that filtered kind of spacey sound in the beginning. And speaking of space, I added very tight tape reverb to this, so that when I did these edits, which you'll hear in a second, it's got a little bit of tape delay on it. So I did these edits. Originally, I had this going through the whole track, and I wanted a break from it to develop a groove. After the intro, I've got this breakdown with the vocals. And I take out, obviously, the sub. This is how the organ edit ended up. And I added some Serum. I forget where I got this preset from, but it's a bit of a trancey kind of arpeggio that I made. And just programmed a little arpeggiated groove here. So when it's all in, it's adding groove to my first drop. So back to the disco filter. I cut out these edits so that it's a little bit more of a minimal feel in the first drop. And then for the second drop, I bring it all back in. So that's that for the kind of housey string and filtered atmospheres. It's I think the key component of the song. I enjoy the other parts, but the process of sampling and resampling and re-editing this filtered organ track with the strings behind it really set the tone of the track in and allowed me to build the rest of it around that. As I already mentioned, the organ is still there, and I added a sub from Ableton. This is actually the first time I've used a sub from Ableton, and I really liked it. I normally use Massive for my subs, but I gave this a try. This is a preset in Ableton 11 Suite. It's called My Sub Bass, and I shortened it and cut down the release to about just under 5 milliseconds. And I think it did the job. It's got a little bit of squelch on the top end. I added some saturation to it, and of course multi-dynamic compressor so that I could bring out the bass and tame the mids a little bit so that it didn't sound too throaty in the mid section. I wanted it to be a really powerful sub, so I cut down on some of the mid frequencies, and also added some sidechain compression so that it could duck with the kick. Actually, as you can see, I did try using Massive as a sub, but went with the Ableton instead, and I think it suits the track really well. Next, I'll show you what I did with some of the percussion. So on top of the BFD drums, I added a little bit of percussion. If you guys are familiar with this, this is XLN's XO. It organizes your samples into atmospheres. Let me see here. So here's all my kicks. Here's all my effects. Toms, snares and claps, hi-hats, shakers, and tops, cymbals, and clicks and percussion. This is a really good tool for organizing your sample bank and an inspiring way to organize your samples. Rather than look through Ableton's window of samples or your own sample packs, I think this is where I got the organ from. Anyways, rather than do that, this makes it really easy to find the samples that you're looking for. By scanning through, you can use the cloud format, or you can also scan through and look through
Pussy.
You can look through similar samples, and it'll suggest them by tone, and it's a really easy way to go through your samples and find similar sounds. So I used XO to come up with the percussion. At least this section. I also added a couple of other things. So that when it's all together, it's just building on the groove, I think, at least. I've also got, what's this? Clap and another little percussive hit. And then, what else do I have here? Oh yeah, the tops. So I've got hi-hats. With a little bit of EQ. And I programmed, I guess I programmed this one from a drum rack, and that's got shakers and whatnot. And what else is here? More shakers with some panning. Lots of shakers, lots of panning. All of these things are very low in the mix and just add to the groove. And together it ends up being quite a lot. I've got some EQ to roll off the lows and just a little bit of a boost for the top end. I struggle with tinnitus, and so mixing the top end is something that's really challenging for me. I highly suggest going to see an ear specialist if you've been exposed to loud music like I have for the better part of 2.5 decades. It's worth preserving the hearing that you have by going to see an ear, nose, and throat specialist so that you can get custom earplugs and also preserve the hearing that you have by getting the suggestions for supplements and multivitamins. Unfortunately, there's no cure for tinnitus right now, but it's important to respect your hearing, because like me, once it's gone, and there's no getting it back. So just public service announcement. It's worth protecting your hearing. And then I guess after that message, thanks for listening. The last thing is the atmospheres. I already went through the filtered kind of string loop. And then the only other thing I have is some risers as transitions. I've got a couple transitions here. Let's see what that is. And that's like stock samples. I got these from an artist sample pack. Please check his site out. If you haven't heard of Unit, he's an incredible dub, breakbeat, jungle, drum and bass artist. Unit. He's had releases on Metalheads. He's got his own fantastic record label. And if you go to his Bandcamp, actually, let's do that now. Pick up his music and his amazing sample packs. So I got these atmospheres from Unit, and you can see he's got an amazing catalog. And he's got a bunch of sample packs available. This is Awesome Pads. He's got Ambient Breakbeat Volume 1 and 2. His stuff is incredible. His music and his sample packs. He's super producer. Totally underrated. I can't suggest him enough. Go check out Unit. I'll put a link in the description below. So I got these risers from Unit, and then there's also, I think that's it actually for this. I've got a couple of things that I abandoned that, actually that was in the original first version of the track, and you can hear this guitar actually made it into you can actually hear that guitar sample made it into the resample of the kind of filtered house track in the background, the atmospheres. So that's neat. And then I don't think I use this. No. So I think that's it. That's a walkthrough of my track. I'm really excited to be releasing it. It's coming out in October. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have regarding the production. If there's anything that you want made a little bit clearer, I'd be happy to answer some questions. Also, I'm going to be making this project available if you want to see it. It's going to have everything that you see here in audio if you want to practice mixing or see how I set up my tracks as far as the template goes and how I organize my tracks, and you'll be able to see the effects. The only thing I won't be able to include is the vocal samples. Obviously those belong to LeMay and her awesome sample pack. So if you want to pick the vocal samples up, head to her website. The link is in the description below, and you'll be able to pick those up and make some magic of your own. And don't forget, if you want more great tips like this, head to my website, electronicmusictips.com. I'll put the link in the description below, where you can pick up my free 6-step guide on how I make electronic music from start to finish. It's full of great techniques and tips and tricks, like you saw today, in great depth. It breaks down how I make a song from start to finish. And I'll see you on the next video. Bye, friend.
Everybody get down, get down. Everybody.